Hey guys, what's going on, dudes? It's David here. We're back with another video. Now, in this video, guys, we shall be discussing NASCAR. Now, when it comes to NASCAR, what we'll be discussing about today, we're going to be talking about one of the greatest teams in NASCAR history, Hendrick Motorsports. The team that's had the likes of Jeff Gordon, Jimmie Johnson, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, Dale Earnhardt Jr. for a bit of time, and last year's series champion Kyle Larson, winning his first ever championship with Hendrick Motorsports. Now, what we'll be discussing about today is the two drivers that we talked about, or the first two drivers I mentioned when it came to Hendrick Motorsports, probably the two greatest drivers to ever drive for Hendrick Motorsports, that is Jeff Gordon and Jimmie Johnson. And in today's video, we'll be finding out whether Jimmie Johnson or Jeff Gordon was the best Hendrick Motorsports driver of all time. Now, obviously, there's going to be a bit of bias considering Jeff Gordon was my driver growing up and he was my hero growing up. But that still doesn't really matter, and I'm gonna be straight to some point. I got the stats down throughout their career history, excluding their first season that they only ran a couple races. I'm starting from their first full-time season to their last full-time season. So without further ado, let's get into this, and let's begin with the 7-time champion that is Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie Johnson spent 19 years in the NASCAR Cup Series season. He ran 686 races. He won 7 championships in those 19 years. So 12 of those years, he did not win the championship. And I gotta be honest, that is still kind of impressive, the fact that he did run 19 years and won 7 championships. He almost won half. He almost won half the championships that he raced in basically throughout the years. And we always remember that the last 3 seasons of Jimmie Johnson weren't always his best, considering for the final 3 years of his career, he went on a winless streak. And I just want to say this also. Actually, I'm going to get into it later when I get into Jeff Gordon. But Jimmie Johnson's stats goes by this. In a 19-year career, he had 7 championships. He had 83 wins. He had 232 top 5s with 374 top 10s. He had 36 poles, 18,941 laps led. He earned $150 million throughout his career. He had an average start of 12.3, and he had an average finish of 13.1. Now, this is the thing. Jimmie Johnson got his start from the 48 car, but Jimmie Johnson also got his start due down to the driver that he ended up replacing as the leader of Hendrick Motorsports once Jeff Gordon retired, and that is Jeff Gordon himself. Now, looking at these stats for Jimmie Johnson, these are some pretty good stats considering he only raced 19 years. And if he were to have raced, like, let's say 3 more years to get to around where Jeff Gordon finished his career, which is around 23 years, so Jimmie Johnson had done like 22 years, I don't think Jimmie Johnson would have probably gotten to 93 wins like Jeff Gordon did, and I don't think he would have gotten to those stats that Jeff Gordon did, but still, within the 19 years, 686 races, 7 championships, 83 wins, I think he is almost tied for 5th all-time. I think he's 1 win behind being tied for 5th all-time on the NASCAR wins list, but still, and a very impressive career for Jimmie Johnson, who started racing in 2002 and finished racing in NASCAR in 2020. Now, here comes what I probably will do in another video, but could be I will get the stats between the 3 drivers that I think are between the 4. I mean, these two are 2 out of the greatest of all times that I possibly would say. I think the other 2 that you would have to mention, obviously, is Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty. But we can go on into who's the truly greatest of all time when it comes to NASCAR. Now, the king is Richard Petty. I will not debate that. The king is Richard Petty. Richard Petty has 200 career wins in NASCAR. Nobody's ever going to touch that win record. If somebody does, they're cheating. I just want to say that. If somebody touches that 200 win record, they're cheating. There's no way somebody gets the Richard Petty's 200 win record unless you start winning at a young age and you continue to win through probably at least 2 to 3 races each and every season, which is actually kind of impossible. Because not even Kyle Busch has been able to do that. And Kyle Busch has been one of the hottest prospects coming out of NASCAR throughout the past few years. But Jeff Gordon, man, oh man, my favorite driver. I wasn't even born when he started racing NASCAR, man. He started racing NASCAR in 1993, and he finished his career, of course, in 2015. I am not counting the 2016 season because it was not a full-time season, but I do have the number of races, and Jeff Gordon is NASCAR's Ironman, running a total of 805 races, has 4 championships, quote-unquote 4 championships, because 2004, NASCAR decided to introduce something called the Chase for the Cup format and get rid of the Winston Cup format. And it has been said, and it is proven, that if the Winston Cup format had stayed to at least 2008, 2009, Jeff Gordon would be at least a 6-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. At least a 6-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. So considering the fact that Jeff Gordon has 4 championships, but 2 championships possibly got taken away due to the Chase format, I mean, it's all a part of NASCAR. That happens. Jimmie Johnson, when the Chase got introduced, he was basically the king of the Chase, and he won 5 straight championships from 2006 to 2010. So he was a Chase format. I'd probably say Jeff Gordon was the best driver of the 90s. Jimmie Johnson was possibly the greatest driver of the 2000s. And then the 2010s, we moved on to Kyle Busch. So I guess it's kind of gone like that. But besides that, Jeff Gordon has 93 wins. He's 3rd all-time on NASCAR's win list behind David Pearson and Richard Petty. David Pearson has 105 wins, and Richard Petty has 200 wins. But still being 3rd all-time, and I gotta be honest, when Jimmie Johnson was getting towards the end of his career, I was scared. I was legit scared that Jimmie Johnson was going to pass Jeff Gordon for 3rd all-time on NASCAR wins list, but he finished 10 behind Jeff Gordon. Now, here's the interesting stats. Jeff Gordon has raced 4 more years than Jimmie Johnson, and he has almost 100 more top 5s. Jeff Gordon has 325 top 5s, 477 top 10s. He has 103 more top 10s than Jimmie Johnson in a space of 23 years. Jeff Gordon earned 81 poles. Jimmie Johnson only had 36. So even if Jimmie Johnson had raced a couple 3-4 more years, Jimmie Johnson would have been nowhere close to Jeff Gordon in terms of poles. In terms of laps led, I also think that even if Jimmie Johnson had raced another 3 years, Jimmie Johnson would never have been able to catch Jeff Gordon laps led, because Jeff Gordon led 24,936 laps led. Now, here's the interesting part. Another interesting part. Jimmie Johnson earned $150 million, but Jimmie Johnson started racing in 2002. Jeff Gordon earned $153 million, but he started racing in 1993. So Jeff Gordon earned $3 more million than Jimmie Johnson, but you got to understand that the earnings were different back when Jeff Gordon started racing compared to when Jimmie Johnson started racing. So Jeff Gordon had been getting paid the amount of money that he was earning in the 2000s and 2010s. He would probably be at least close to over $200 million in total earnings. He had an average start of 10.5 and average finish of 12.5. So Jeff Gordon's average start was at least in the top 10 or the top 15, and his average finish was always in the top 15 throughout his whole career in total. Looking at these stats, the only thing that I see different that would possibly change my mind when it comes to who is the greatest driver at Hendrick Motorsports career, Hendrick Motorsports all time, is the championships. But I gotta look at the championships and look at also the fact. If the Winston Cup format has stayed, Jeff Gordon would be a 6-time champion, and Jimmie Johnson would probably at least be like a 5 or 6-time champion, so it would be kind of even. So I'm gonna take that into account. But looking at all these other stats, the 93 wins, 325 top 5s, 477 top 10s, compared to Jimmie Johnson's 232 top 5s and 374 top 10s, I just gotta be honest with you guys, and I know you guys are gonna say I'm biased because I'm a Jeff Gordon fan, but I'm not being biased. In my honest opinion, and due down to the stats and due down to how the racing went, Jeff Gordon is officially Hendrick Motorsports' greatest driver of all time, and that's why he's the vice president now. That's because Jeff Gordon is a long-standing Hendrick Motorsports guy. He never left Rick Hendrick for any other team. He stayed with Rick Hendrick. So did Jimmie Johnson. These two are the legends of Hendrick Motorsports, and they will be forever remembered when it comes to whenever you think Hendrick Motorsports, you're going to think of these two drivers instantly. But when you think of Hendrick Motorsports and you put one guy to put Hendrick Motorsports on the map, I'm going to go with Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon is the greatest driver of Hendrick Motorsports history.